Hi guys, this is Two Awesome Men. My name is Marquez, and this is...
Like I just slowly stop. Incredibles 2 is written and directed by Brad Bird.
Yeah, and this movie stars Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Sarah Vowell, Huck Milner, Hugo,
I haven't been paying attention to what you've been saying.
Bob Odenkirk, and Samuel L. Jackson. Alright, guys. Now, time for a review.
Remember we did that for our first video?
Time for a review, guys. Okay, so now it's time for a review. In case you're watching this video and you're like, hey man, what are they talking about? What are they just talking about? What is this? It's a review, guys. And this movie has been highly anticipated ever since the first one. And finally, after 14 years, we are finally getting Incredibles 2, which apparently some people are mad because there's no "the" in the beginning of this movie.
Yeah, like there was in the first movie.
Yeah. And to be honest, this movie is not bad. I liked it. I mean, like the first one is like just perfection.
Yeah.
I felt
it's like the first one is probably my favorite Pixar movie because I honestly have like nothing bad to say about the first one. There's nothing that I didn't like.
Yeah. The first one had this nice little balance. It knew it was a kid's movie, but it also felt like it needed to have this kind of darker side to it, which it wasn't like a dark movie, but it had this side to it that was dark. This one, I'll say, was good, but overall it felt more like a kid's movie than the first one did. The first one felt like true. You know, it felt like what a family would actually be in these situations if it had superpowers and if that story was actually happening. This one felt a lot more kiddish. And it didn't feel like one of those like baby movies or anything like that, but it did feel a lot more kiddish than what I was wanting it to feel like.
One good thing that Brad Bird did well in this movie, which I've read that he stated several times since the first one came out that he didn't want to do a sequel until he had a story that he felt would be respectable, that would be as good as the first one. But one thing he did well in this one was that he kept the characters true to who they were from the first one.
One thing I also want to bring up is there is a lot of comedy in this movie, and most of the comedy actually works for this movie. There are some times where it doesn't work. Never does it feel like odd or out of place. There are times where it just doesn't work, but overall, the comedy is actually really funny in this movie. Jack, they really use his new discovery about his character. They really use it to its advantage because it really works out for this movie. There are a lot of things that work for this movie.
Just something to be expected by a Pixar movie is that the animation was just amazing. Yeah. There were some scenes where like it would like turn to a character, and for a split second I would think that like the character was actually like a real person, but then I'm like, oh wait, hold on, it's like animation.
Another thing this movie does fantastic, I felt like, was the family aspect for this movie was very well done. You always feel like this family is very close-knit. They always feel like they're a very good family. They always try their best, you know, in this family, but it's always hard in some situations. And I felt like this movie really contributed to that, especially with the dad. You have the dad taking care of the kids, which was pretty cool at some parts. It was pretty nice because you actually do get to see a nice blooming relationship between the father and his kids, which you see in the first one, but not as much, you know. So it's nice to see that aspect of it. The villain for this movie, Screenslaver, I actually really liked in this movie. There was a nice little scene that had the villain in there that I actually kind of felt creepy for just a little bit, and I felt like that scene was really well done. Most of the characters I really feel like were very well written for this movie. I mean, you have them coming from the first one already, but I just feel like most of the characters were very well grounded. And bringing all those positive points together, they really do add up to a really nice story overall. If you look at the movie, the story is actually really intriguing at times, and it's really fun to watch.
But that does lead to one of our negatives, which I'm not saying the story is bad per se, because I actually did enjoy the movie and the story, but it is sort of similar to the first movie, just with the two roles switched, with the mom, Helen, going out and doing the hero stuff, with Bob staying home and looking after the kids. But it just sort of felt pretty similar overall.
Yeah. I also felt like, and I know this may get hate, but But I felt like the aspect they're trying to go for, which I would have liked, I would have been fine with it. But I just feel like a lot of times movies, when they have like this new Ocean's 8 or like Ghostbusters movie, when they try to do something with powerful women, it's usually crazy ham-fisted into the movie. Whenever there's other movies out there like, you know, I mean, it feels weird bringing it up for an Incredibles movie, but a movie like Annihilation, which actually does have strong female leads and nobody is talking about it. But this movie, I just feel like it's a tiny bit ham-fisted. Not nearly as much as some of the movies that have come out nowadays, like Ghostbusters and Ocean's 8. But overall, I felt like they could have just had her doing it in a way. Yeah. But at times, it just felt like they're trying to make it too much of a powerful thing.
Yeah, because like in the first one, they were able to show like her as that she was a strong character by having her just do stuff, and they did. I mean, they made little mentions every now and then. Yeah. I don't even think that they made that many mentions in the first one. Yeah. But this one, they said it pretty much like over and over again. And it is sort of funny how we're talking about how they try to really have a really big female empowerment in this movie. Whenever they made Miss Incredible like super thick in this movie, like even more so than I noticed in the first one, they like really over sexualized her.
That is so true. There was little scenes where I remember they actually had a scene where it was like zoomed up on her butt for like no reason. And it really felt like some of those older like comic book or action movies where like there's like one female and they try their best to like just show her from different angles that have her butt in it or something. Right.
Yeah, and like especially towards the end, I don't know if it was throughout the movie, just especially towards the end, I was like, did they really animate her like that? And one thing I noticed throughout this movie, and one thing that really disappointed me, is that a lot of scenes just really drug in this movie. Whereas in the first movie, there's like literally like no scene that I felt like could have been deleted. But I felt this one, there was like several scenes I feel like they could have just taken out. Yeah. Because it just like really drug. Yeah. And I could feel like the kids in the theater just start getting restless through some of the scenes. Yeah.
And another thing I want to bring up is, and we're going to have a spoiler section in a second, but we just want to kind of vaguely go over some of these. We'll go more into detail in a second. I felt like the movie, there's something that happens that they made way too predictable. Like crazy predictable, to the point where I almost realized what was going to happen at the end of the movie by like midway through. And they tried to do it in a way where it wasn't predictable, but it almost made it predictable. And I don't really want to go much further than that until just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up something, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's a spoiler, but it kind of maybe is. And then after that, we are definitely talking about spoilers. So if you don't want like absolutely anything, go ahead and go to this timestamp right here so you can go after we talk about all of this. But one of the biggest things, this is my biggest complaint about the entire movie, right? So in the first Incredibles, you had a pretty decent portion of it belonging to Mr. Incredible, you know, and him, and it being him, right? But you also had a nice little balance to where they actually brought the kids in pretty early in the movie. It had to been maybe like halfway through, maybe a little later than halfway, where they actually brought the other parts of the family in and actually made The Incredibles. This movie, it's like they had the very beginning of it have The Incredibles in it, and then the rest of it was just the mom forever. For most of the movie, it's practically just the mom. And back and forth, they would go to the family living at the house until at the last, I'm going to say 15, maybe 20 minutes of the movie is whenever the family was brought back into it. Now, my problem with this is that the movie is called The Incredibles. You know, it's not called Elastigirl. You know, it's called The Incredibles, which makes sense to actually have the entire family be in the movie, right? Because, I mean, that's what they're wanting to do. So the movie doesn't, I was wanting it to feel like a family of superheroes that are family, but what it felt like more was just a family that had superpowers, because they didn't really bring them much into the movie at all. And especially after waiting 14 years after the first one, which the first one would have been cool to have more of the family in, but especially after waiting 14 years after the first one, you're going to have a practically complete movie with the whole family being fighting people, barely be maybe like 30 minutes of the entire movie.
Okay, guys, so we're now going to go into complete spoiler section. So if you don't want anything spoiled for you for this movie, you can go to this timestamp again. All right, so one of the, like I said earlier, a lot of scenes really drug in this movie, and some of the scenes that I felt drugged the most was whenever Elastigirl would talk to I can't remember the character's name, but Bob Odenkirk's sister, who actually turns out to be screenslaver at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
They lasted like such a long time, and I felt like they could have been really taken out. And I feel like they were only in the movie just so they could, like, whenever she's revealed to be screenslaver, so that'd be like some dramatic, surprising thing. But really, I felt like it really made it even more obvious because those scenes just seemed so out of place.
Yeah, I could actually, I can't remember what it was. It was either the first or the second conversation. But by that time, I could already tell that she was going to be the villain of the whole movie. Mm-hmm. And it didn't ruin it, but it just became, at that point, I was like, it's like, whenever it was revealed, I was like, oh.
Yeah, okay. Which by the way, that character reminded me a lot of Tina Fey's character from Megamind. And another big gripe that happened pretty much, not really throughout the entire movie, but it happened every now and then, was that the dialogue sometimes felt really awkward and sort of weak at times. Because, like, for example, at the beginning of the movie starts where the first one ended.
Yeah.
But this one starts with the guy that Violet liked in the first one. He's telling a story of what happens.
Yeah. And
it just felt really, I mean, I guess it could have worked, but the way they did it was really awkward. He was just telling the story when they could have just had it start with the fight instead of with no narration or anything.
Another issue I have with this movie was that they have other superheroes in this movie, which it's fine, but they felt weird in this movie. They didn't really feel, they didn't really feel like they were adding much to the movie. Like, I felt like the movie thought it was, I felt like the movie thought these characters were, like, really good characters, but just through the movie, they either just felt like they weren't, like, didn't really do anything, or they just felt kind of weird and awkward at times.
Yeah, and especially there's one character, which I can't remember, I think her name is Boyd. Boyd. She was the one with the portals. I felt that she was really annoying, and a lot of her scenes were really awkward, which I know they're trying to make her an awkward character, but it just became, like, really annoying.
Yeah, also with that character, a few things actually, is that I felt like with that character, they really tried to make her crazy relevant through the movie. Like, there was times where she didn't really have that big of an impact on the movie, but there was times where they would have, like, a little cut to her talking. Like, there was a part at the end whenever Elastigirl was, like, falling from the air, and they kept going to her, and it's like, oh, become a parachute, please do a parachute, please do a parachute. I'm like, why are you switching back to her? They can just show Elastigirl becoming a parachute. And I don't really want to say it's like an issue. It kind of is, because they didn't really, it felt weird because they never really went into any detail with it at all. It was kind of obvious that they're trying to make like an LGBT character out of her. Mm-hmm. But they never went that route. And it felt awkward. And I felt like just either do it or don't do it, because it felt like they were trying to do it, but then they just stopped short of it, and so it just felt like awkward. The character was just awkwardly. She felt like honestly felt like she was like highly attracted to Elastigirl, and in the end, it felt like she was attracted to Violet at the very end. Like, they just had a weird little conversation. Like, they just kept stopped short, and it just felt really strange. I just didn't like the characters. It just felt really awkward at times. Yeah, guys. So overall, this movie wasn't that fantastic. Not nearly as good as the first one. I know people say, well, it's never going to be as good as the first, but I felt like this movie could have been somewhere near it. It could have been better, especially after 14 years. This is what we got. Is a little disappointing. But overall, it is enjoyable to watch. I wouldn't mind watching it again. I probably wouldn't go do it myself, but if someone's inviting me, I wouldn't mind watching it again. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that Incredibles 2 is 73% awesome.
Yeah, I will say this movie was sort of a disappointment. I try to keep my expectations low because I didn't want to have too high of expectations and be super disappointed by it. And I'm not going to say it was a bad movie at all, but I still won't say it was a great one either. So I'm going to say that Incredibles 2 is 68% awesome.
Sulfur guys.
Sulfur guys?
Yeah, we're changing the channel. The Sulfur guys. So guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also comment below and tell us what you thought about Incredibles 2. If you liked it more than the first one for some reason or another, let us know that. Maybe even tell us maybe what your favorite Pixar movie is as well, and kind of just do a brief description of maybe what you liked about this movie and what you didn't like.
And don't forget to follow us on social media with Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.